Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om. Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karvavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om. My humble pranams to revered Swami Pitambaranandaji Maharaj, and my heartfelt regards to all the devotees who are participating in this online session. We are extremely delighted and also fortunate to have with us revered Swami Pitambaranandaji Maharaj for the next 3 days, today, tomorrow and day after. Swami Pitambaranandaji is a senior monk of the Ramakrishna order. He actually needs no introduction, as he is well known to all of us as a monk with exceptional erudition and grasp over Vedanta and Sri Ramakrishna Bhavadhara. On a personal note, I would like to submit very humbly that I myself have been one of the many recipients of his affection, attention, and grace in the form of tutorials in scriptures. His insights into the statements of scriptures is profound, and so is his capability to effectively communicate these insights. To talk about his life in brief, Maharaj was born in 1937. In 1959, after completing his MSc in mathematics, he joined the Ramakrishna Mutt at Nagpur when he was just 22 years old. During 1959 and 1968 at Nagpur Mutt, and from 1968 to 1970 at Belur Mutt, he received training in spiritual life, scriptures, and various service activities. From 1970 to 1978, he held many responsible positions in Nagpur Mutt. During this span of time, he was one of the editors of the Marathi monthly journal Jeevan Vikas. He was also in charge of the public library and reading room, as well as he was the warden of Vivekanand Vidyarthi Bhavan, a student's home for college students. From 1978 to 1979, it is interesting that he spent 1 year in solitude at Ramakrishna Mutt Kutir, Rishikesh. Between 1979 and 1982, he discoursed on Vedanta and allied spiritual topics while staying at Ramakrishna Mutt, Mumbai. For 10 long years, from 1982 to 1992, he served as the warden and assistant secretary at Ramakrishna Mission Students' Home, Chennai. And there he used to regularly hold scriptural classes for monastics in the students' home. And these classes were attended by monastics from the Ramakrishna Mutt, Chennai, Mylapore. And he also delivered public discourses at Chennai Ramakrishna Mutt. From 1992 to 2002, he was the head of Ramakrishna Mission Ashram, Chandigarh. And he was also responsible for preaching work throughout Punjab, Haryana, and Himachal Pradesh. From 2002 to 2012, he was doing intense spiritual practices, mainly at Ramakrishna Mutt Kutir, Rishikesh. And from July 2012 onwards, on earnest invitations from Ramakrishna Mission centers and associated institutions in various parts of the country, he has been moving from place to place, discoursing on Vedanta, Ramakrishna Sharada Devi, Vivekananda, Avadhara, and many other important spiritual subjects. And these discourses have been avidly listened to by the monastic members of the Ramakrishna order as well as the devotees associated with Ramakrishna Mission. Now, presently, he is staying at Khetri Ramakrishna Mission, and we are extremely fortunate today that we have with us revered Swami Pitambaraji Maharaj, who will be enlightening us on this important subject of Sri Shankaracharya, his life and his teachings. So without further delay, I humbly request revered Maharaj to start the session and enlighten us on the subject of Sri Shankaracharya, his life and teachings. I request all the participants to turn off their microphones as well as video, and I also request, please do not interrupt while Maharaj is speaking. Your questions are welcome. He will be very happy to respond to your questions. You can send your questions through the chat, or you can write to us at mail@advaitashrama.org. Your questions have to reach us within 2 hours after the completion of this session. And these questions will be taken up by Maharaj tomorrow. So, Maharaj, I humbly request you to take over the session and start your class.
Om Shruti Smruti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Loka Shankaram. Friends, Swami Shuddhidanji has introduced me, but I wish to introduce myself to you. And also I want to introduce yourself to you before I start. What I am not, let me tell you. I am not a historian. So don't expect from me history of Shankaracharya. I am not a philosopher. Philosophy, I believe, is intellectual pursuit of the truth. I am not philosopher. And some people call me scholar, which I do not like. Then what I am? In one word, I am a sadhaka. It is difficult to translate this word in English. Some people say spiritual aspirant, or spiritual seeker, or spiritual struggler. You may add, I do not define sadhaka here now. You may add one adjective to this sadhaka. Because my one-pointed utmost devotion is towards the supreme reality. You can call me, if you like, a Brahmanishta sadhaka. Now, my perspective will be entirely different. I do not approach any subject in the world without thinking of the Anubandha Chatushta. So, what is the aim of life? What is the subject matter of study? What are we, the Adhikari? And what is the connection between this talk or this study and your listening and my talking with our aim of life? That is very important. Now the ultimate aim of life itself can be defined in 2 different ways, mind you. This we learn more from Sri Ramakrishna, though we learn this from Shankaracharya also. The one aim of life which Shankar declares is the realization of the identity between our reality and the universal reality. But a little lower aim, below the identity, is the unity between Jiva and Brahman. Shankar calls it Krama Mukti. Sri Ramakrishna called that also Mukti. Please remember, it is Mukti. Krama or non-Krama. So, these two I hold as the aim of life. Let me be more clear here. Householders in general do not reach above Krama Mukti. Where there in our mind, if there is a split subject dealing with objects, which the householders generally have, I will illustrate by a story given by Sri Ramakrishna in the Gospel. Parvati, Mother Parvati's father, Himalaya, when he understood that his daughter is the Jagat Shakti, he requested her, if I am your father, I have some claim. She said, what do you want, father? I want to experience so many spiritual experiences. I want to experience so many gods and goddesses. She said, all right, father, just close your eyes, think of the idea, and you will get it by my power. Now, his ambition, spiritual ambition increased. He had several visions. Then he said, my daughter, will you not give me the experience of the Nirguna Brahma through Nirvikalpa Samadhi? She said, my father, for that you will have to associate with the sannyasin. So it is a question of the mind. The mind of a sannyasi is not split in subject and object. If it is split, then you go up to Karma Mukti. And so Parvati clearly told my father that by my power you are not going to achieve. To achieve that you have to change your mind. And you have to associate with sannyasis. You have heard that I lived in Rishikesh for a very long time. And I used to joke there. Joke means sincerely feel actually that it is my grandfather's house. Parvati is my mother, Himalaya is my grandfather. And my grandfather has become Sthitaprajna. Anyway, I am not dealing with that further. So remember, both of these can be held as aim of life, please, first of all. And this we learn, as I said, Shankar calls it Karma Mukti, but in Sri Ramakrishna literature, we find this also is called Mukti. Now, so that is the aim of life. Then, what is the subject matter? Our subject matter of discussion is Sri Shankaracharya's life and teachings. Now let me make one point very clear here. That is the routine way of putting things. But these Mahapurushas teach more by their lives than by their vocal teaching. And their teaching also is never only vocal. By their life, by their behavior, by what all they did in their life, they are teaching and teaching and teaching us. So life and teaching, though the subject is declared, I am not going to split it in this way, remember. That is the subject matter. And what are we? Now, it is a wrong habit in some of us that if we reach some particular state of life, we decry the lower states. That is wrong. Because I should remember, as a beginner, before I joined the Ramakrishna Math and met my Guruji, did I have clear idea of what is God? Did I have clear idea of the goal of life? And had I the adhikar to reach that? No. But I cannot say I did not have adhikar. Swami Vivekananda has said, each soul is potentially divine. Now, so this adhikar point, every man's mind is different, please remember. And this difference of mind is of two different varieties. One is the level to which it has reached. The level to which a mind has risen in spiritual experience is one point of adhikar difference. Second point is the variety of the mind. And this infinite variety is recognized in what is today we call Hinduism or Vedic religion. And so, if Shankaracharya is called Jagat Guru, not by title, the meaning of Jagat Guru is that you must remember what is Jagat Guru. That he is able to guide the lowest of the adhikari and to the highest of the adhikari. And is able to guide all varieties of adhikaris, then only is Jagat Guru. So, we have to see him in this light, this perspective. How he guides the lowest of the lowest man. But the lowest of the lowest man does not want to remain. He wants to grow spiritually. He desires mukti. His mukti concept also will go on changing, but he desires mukti. And to him, Shankar by his life and teachings should be able to provide guidance, then only I call him Jagat Guru. And to the highest man, to the Paramahamsas, he should be able to guide to reach mukti. And all the varieties should be included. And so, first let us go to his life a little. Now, certain things in his life to us will appear miraculous. Certain things of his life will appear exceptional. We cannot follow them. And this session is not meant to eulogize Shankar. That will be like give vote to Shankar. No. It will be how much we can follow. We are interested to receive guidance from his life. And so, I will state in brief certain things. You see, there is a predetermined lifespan. But predetermined lifespan also changes. This please remember. Predetermined lifespan is there, and by the grace, there are certain reasons. One of them being the grace of a Brahmajna, it can change. I have seen it in my life. I will give you a famous example. All of you know that. Revered Swami Bhaumananji's example I am giving, those who name me. In Nagpur, when his age was running 35, you know there are gypsies in Bastar area. And they entered, a lot of them, in the ashram. And seeing the face of a man, they could tell what is your life. So they told Bhaumananji, your Paramayu is 35. And he was running 35 at that time, mind you. He did not tell it to Maharaj, but he was shocked. Some other friends of his told Maharaj, my Guruji. Maharaj called him and said, nobody can tell you how much you can live. Don't listen to those things. And all of us know that he lived a span of life beyond 90 years of age. I have seen some other people in Nagpur. I don't want to talk about myself. So, lifespan is there fixed and it can change also. There is no mysticism in this. Now, Shankar's lifespan as determined before his birth was 8 years only. Now, his father passed away when his age was 3. His father's name was Shiva Guru. Mother's name, various books are given various names. But I believe the mother's name was Aryamba. Though in some books, Vishishta Devi. Anyway. And his father passed away when he was at the age of 3. He was sent to school, Vedic school. At the age, Upanayan was done at age of 5 and he was sent to Gurukul. And in 3 years, he completed his study of Vedas. Now this is wonderful. We cannot follow. We need not follow. So, we need not follow those things which you cannot follow. Of course, those who are interested, how he learned, he used to attend his class, he used to attend the senior class, he used to attend every class, and so he learned quickly. Anyway. But at the end of 5 years, at the end of 7 years, in 2 years he learned, not 3. He finished his learning at the age of 7. Now, what was the circumstance in those days? The kings in Kerala wanted him to be their Sabha Pandit at the age of 7. 1 year he passed in his house and he was never ready for that. If you read his commentary on the Mundak Upanishad, I will put both together now, I told you. Mundak Upanishad commentary is almost Shankaracharya's autobiography. There is the verse in Mundak Upanishad, Pariksha Lokan Karmachitan Brahmano Nirvedamayat Nasti Akruta Krutena Kimsyat. Kimsyat is addition. Tad Vijnanartham sa Gurumeva Abhigachet Samit Pani Shrotriyam Brahma Nishtam. So Shankar, by his intellect, understood, analyzed all the possible lokas which he can gain by doing good karma or karma mixed with knowledge. And having examined all of them, he found they are wanting. The result of karma, which is a finite thing, can never give you infinite result. What shall I do? In this whole universe of different lokas, there is nothing which is not the result of karma. What I shall do with these things? I want to know the ultimate reality, which is my reality. And Shankar's famous statement, please listen all of you. He says, even if you are a erudite scholar in scriptures, if you want to realize Brahman, you cannot do so without a guru. In that bhashya of that mantra of Mundak Upanishad, he says, Shastragyopi swatantrena brahmanveshanam na kuryat iti avadharana phalam. In that mantra it is there, tad vijnanartham sa gurum eva abhigachet. Eva is emphasis. Shankar says this emphasis tells you that you may be a Shastragya, but you cannot try to realize Brahman without the help of a guru. Everywhere where he wants to tell, in the Mundaka itself, difference between Apara and Paravidya, there also he says, Paravidya is not Upanishads. Upanishad Shabdarashi. Paravidya requires going to a guru. So, these are fundamental tenets in Shankaracharya. Only Advaita philosophy is not the only thing. Fundamental tenets in Shankara's teachings everywhere is that guru is necessary. Now, so he went to his guru. Now, as there are laws in the physical world, there are laws in the spiritual world. In Christian terminology, they say, a seeking sinner meeteth the seeking Savior. Sinner Savior is their terminology. A seeking sadhak meets a seeking guru. So the guru also wants to have this disciple, and the disciple, that is a spiritual law. And because of his special mind, he came to know internally. He was born in Kaladi in Kerala near the Purna river. So many things are there. He diverted the river and all, we need not go about that. We know that today Kaladi stands at the bank of Purna river. In their language they call it Periyar. And his guru resides at the heart of Narmada in Omkareshwar. These were not the 21st century, mind you. No roads, no trains, no cars. And he could not go in a ratha. So walked from Kaladi to Omkareshwar, crossing forest and hills and rivers. So, what we gain from that? Vairagya is absolutely necessary. One pointed attention to the goal of life is absolutely necessary. Along with going to the Guru, this tells us the amount of Vairagya which he had. We will come to that little later. But this he understood. Now I am using the word understanding. Let me tell you another important tenet of Vedanta. Understanding is a poor fellow. Experience and understanding are two parallel lines. Some of us think that first we will understand, then we will realize. And those who understand, there is a school of Vedanta in India today. I don't want to take their name. But they are telling there is nothing called dhyana publicly. There is nothing called samadhi. There is nothing called anubhav. You study Vedanta and you have understood Vedanta. And one of them said in a lecture, in a seminar I was there, you should not expect any mystic experience. But if you want to experience God, so I am telling, now take an example, Bhagavan Buddha. He realized, and then it is described that he sat down to rationalize what he has realized. So this buddhi thing is a different thing, experience is a different thing. One more thing I remember here. Years back, 2001 October, I was invited in Gol Park, Institute of Culture, Calcutta, for a lecture on Vedanta. And the president of that lecture was a professor of Nyaya. After my lecture, many people asked questions, I answered. Now the presidential remark is the end. And there he remarked, I remember his sentence, the speaker was emotional at times. And emotion, however good, can never replace solid reason. Nyaya professor is still. I had no occasion to reply to him. But Revered Prabhananji was in charge of culture. He told me, you make a paper out of what you spoke. And those who are interested, in January and February 2002, in the Bulletin of Institute of Culture, that is printed. So there I got the opportunity to reply. And I said, we have heard that emotion, however good, cannot replace solid reason. And reason, however solid it appears, can never replace experience. And we know the difference between emotion and feeling. This is the Kali Yuga, na? So this emotion word has gathered universally. My Guruji used to tell emotion is biological and used to define feeling. Genuine feeling is that which proceeds from absolutely tranquil heart. And Swami Vivekananda has said two currents, two flows, one of knowledge and one of bhava, were running parallel. And when they meet, we get the Upanishads. That is what Swamiji has said. So, experience, that is what we have to struggle for. And a man who has experience, Sri Ramakrishna's all disciples are the examples, they can easily understand Vedanta or any highest philosophy. Some people ask me, or they talk, whom Swami Vivekananda read, from whom he has read. A man who has attained Nirvikalpa Samadhi does not require to read from other. Anyway, so please remember this point importantly. And that is why I said in the beginning, I am neither philosopher nor a scholar. Now, so Shankar is describing now what happened at the age of 8. He was pestering from age 7 to 8. He was with his mother. Rajas were calling him. He did not respond to them, and he was pressing his mother, "Mother, I want to take sannyas and I want to go to a guru." She said, "My child, I am alone. Your father is not there. If you go away, what shall I do?" She was resisting. Now his Paramayu was 8, remember. At the age of 8, mother and son went to, every day they were going, so that day they went to the Purna Nadi to take bath. Mother has finished her bath. The son is still inside, and a crocodile holds his leg. And you know that in water, crocodile is the most powerful. Even Gajendra Moksha, we know, even a big elephant could not release himself. So he was pulling it. And there we have a method called Atura Sannyas, please remember. That when you know your death is near, if you take sannyas, two things may happen. Your lifespan may change, or in the next life you will be born with a good sanskaras. And that is why Atura Sannyas is there. So Shankar is requesting his mother, "Mother, now at least tell me that you have given me permission for sannyas. Because anyway I am dying now. I am of no use to you now." She also thought, when he will not survive, why not have his wish at the end of life? She said, "Okay, my son, I give you permission for sannyas." And at that point, crocodile left him. Now, whether that was a miracle or coincidence, and let you discuss. I am not interested. But what happened is that due to this Atur Sannyas, mentally he has had to take it. His lifespan became 16. So now at that point, now mother had one more difficulty. "My son, when I die, can I not see you?" He knew of his inherent yogic powers. Inherent. He said, "Mother, I promise you, when you see your death approaching, you remember me, and wherever I am, I shall come to you." That was the promise he made at that time. Now, he left his home, tremendous vairagyam, and the result of Vedic studies is expected to be this. There are several examples in our country for this. One bright example is those who know Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's life. His elder brother, Vishwambar, as soon as he completed his studies, he left the home and became a sannyasi. Because of that, Chaitanya's father stopped his going to the school. Chaitanya was a small boy, maybe in our language studying in 3rd form or 4th form. Then what he did, you know? This will make us realize the aim of education also. He would take some dirty thing like filth, excreta on his head and stand before his mother. Mother will say, "What dirty child?" He said, "Mother, how do I know what is dirty and what is good? You are not sending me to school." He would tear his cloth, put on kaupin like and stand before his mother. Are good boys do not do like this. How do I know what is good and bad? You are not sending me to school. Like that, anti-strike he started doing. Then his father's friends told him, "With great difficulty we send our children to school, and your child wants to go to school, please don't stop it." That is how his education was resumed. So, there is a bright example. And many of our monks of the Ramakrishna Mission, as soon as they complete their education, what they do? Sadhu, Ramakrishna Mission. So, this is what is expected of Vedic education. This is what is expected of any right education. To quote Swami Vivekananda, in a letter very important, 2 sentences one after the other he has used. Education is the manifestation of perfection already in man. Next sentence, religion is the manifestation of divinity already in man. Perfection and divinity are not equated there, otherwise there would have been no 2 sentences. Education and religion are not equated there because there are 2 sentences. Education should give us that perfection which makes us qualified for religion. What is perfection? Please remember, I am telling many things together, you have to remember. Gita has told us perfection means the chitta shuddhi we attain by karma. And moksha, Gita tells us sansuddhi, sansiddhi, paramam siddhi, naishkarma siddhi. Siddhi in Gita means the perfection we attain through karma. So through education we have to attain this, and then comes religion. So the end of education everywhere, I will tell another small incident. In Chandigarh I was invited to a girls higher secondary school, the NSS section. I am talking little of education because all should have the same goal of life. The girls there said, our parents always see TV and do not allow us to see TV. They are telling in Hindi, बिटिया अभी पढ़ ले, बाद में ऐश कर लेना. Now study, later on you can enjoy. The girls are telling me, not to their parents, why should we not enjoy now? Suppose we die tomorrow? I told them, how unfortunate that your parents are connecting your education with enjoyment. Education is meant to develop our mind. Education is meant to develop, to make us understand what is the world. Education is meant to understand what we are. And ultimately, real education makes us fit to receive God. You understand that? So, I leave this topic here because so many ideas of education are current today. I do not go that way. So, on one side, the Rajas are calling him. On the other side, he understands by his Vedic studies that the aim of life is to realize God, and this cannot be done without a Guru. And he crosses and reaches Omkareshwar. Those who have, our Sudhir Maharaj told about, we had a very good association in Omkareshwar. Anyway, now those who have seen Omkareshwar know that it is on the other side of Narmada. Now we have a bridge. In Shankar's time there was no such bridge. So he crossed. Now all these miracles we don't want to understand. But he crossed Narmada and there was a cave there. Today also there is a cave. And near that cave he saw some old people sitting. People means whatever you call them, sadhakas, rishis, sannyasis, so old that their beard touching the ground. And he went and asked them, does Govindapad live here somewhere? They said, child, what do you have to do with Govindapad? See our condition. How many years we are living here in the hope of seeing Govindapad, we have not yet seen him. He stays inside the cave. He had no business with what they are doing or not. From their talk he understood, yes, Govindapad is in this cave. So he entered the cave, and as he saluted Govindapad, he opened his eyes, Govindapad, and said, my child, I was waiting for you only. And then Tattvamasi, he said. And some books describe that he realized that moment. Another point of Vedanta I am telling, please. In Vedanta there are two schools in a particular matter, and both have strong supports in the Vedanta itself. One school tells us, Shankara's dear disciple Padmapad school, that knowledge comes by listening. Shankar also has emphasized that the only means of knowledge are the Vedanta Vakyas. The other school tells us that Vedanta comes, knowledge comes by meditation. And both schools have strong supports. In the Shatashatar Upanishad, we find meditation. Now, with the Guru's grace, my analysis is like this. If your mind is pure, like Shankara's was, you cannot imitate that, but we can learn from it. Knowledge comes by listening. Now, what is happening with us? For ages together, how many lives we do not know, we have passed in ignorance. Ignorance means wrong knowledge. The knowledge of a subject-object division, that is Maya. And our thinking has become colored by that. And that is why when we hear from Rishi or Guru, we do not realize it. So, Manan. Manan is not cogitation. The English word for Manan is reflection. We have to revise our thinking, I add, we have to revise our thinking, feeling and will with the help of the knowledge, truth, which we are gaining by what we listen. This is Manana. Manana, because we have wrong thinking, so we get doubts, and we should not put our doubts into the truth, but we should revise our thinking with the help of the truth which we have heard from the Rishis or Gurus. This is Manana. Now, thinking is revised. But in the deepest level of our mind, there are bhoga sanskaras. That also due to how many ages of life in ignorance we have sent. To uproot them, meditation is necessary. When we meditate, we go inside and inside and inside, and we are able to uproot the bhoga sanskara. This we get in Narad Sanat Kumar Samvad in the 7th chapter of the Chandogya Upanishad. After reaching the almost highest plane, Sanat Kumar tells Narada, still there are sanskaras. And so, this is the value of Shravan Manan Nidyasan. That in Shatashatar we are told reason will not go anywhere. And where the reason ends, what is left with you? If reason will not take us anywhere, what is left with us? The power of meditation. And this power of meditation will lead you to the truth. Te dhyana yoga anugata pasyan devatma shakti swagunair nigudan yah karanani nikilani tani kalatma yuktani aditishthati eka brahmavadino vadanti kim karanam brahma kutasma jata jivama kena kacha sampratishta vartamahe kena sukhe tareshu brahmavido vyavastham vartamahe brahmavido vyavastham. They thought, let us think what can be the cause of our coming into the world. And they discussed all the possible theories, even we stand today. No new theory has come. Kala svabhavo niyatir yadricha. I am not explaining everything. Bhutani yoni purushaiti chintya. Sanyoga esham natu atma bhavat atmapi anisho sukha dukha hetu What happened? Reason can disprove everything which is wrong. Reason cannot give us what is the truth. No capacity. So they found that they have destroyed all the possible theories and they have come to the end of their reason also. So pramanantaram anapekshan, they did not see any other means. Te dhyana yoganugata apashyan. That is the dhyana importance. In Indra Virochan Samvad, Indra Prajapati Samvad, along with Virochan, Indra Prajapati told on the first shot about Atman. Virochan could never understand. He went back. Indra was going back. He partially understood. Came back. Thrice he came back and stayed with Prajapati for 32 years. Ultimately, he came to realize the unity. Again, he stayed for 5 years. And he realized the same truth which he had heard on the first day. That is how it is described. So, I think I made my position clear about Shravan, Manana and Nididasa. Now, these are all for the high class sadhakas, mind you. Now, I am, you may call, a man in the street. I am my own asset. I love some form of God. I am a Ganapati worshipper. I am a Shakti worshipper. I am a Shiva worshipper. I am a Surya worshipper. Even today, Shankar had not gone to Arunachal Pradesh. Had he gone there, today the tribals' religion there, they say we are not Hindus. We are sun worshippers and moon worshippers. Shankar could have easily shown them, my dear fellows, sun and moon is worshipped in Vedas also. Anyway, that will come to later on. So Shankar has to provide food, spiritual food. He cannot reject anybody, then he is not Jagadguru. Whether you are a Ganapati worshipper, whether you are a Saura, Shakta, not only that, 1,000 you may say schools were there, different schools of Vedanta. Vedanta you need not call them. Because each man was an island. What the man is doing in Kamakhya in Assam need not be known to the man in Kerala. But Shankar travelled throughout India. I am not telling chronologically, I will come to that again. And what he did, that will come at the second part of his life. He introduced two, three things. Okay, you are Ganpati worshipper. Ganpati is there in the Vedas. And the explanation of your Ganpati worship you find better in the Vedas than in your literature. So accept the Vedas as the final authority and worship Ganpati. And that is why Hinduism name was not there, mind you, in those days. A new religion, as it were, the Vedic religion was born due to Shankara's effort. He made all the Indians had a peculiar, different from everybody in the world. When the invaders came from Arab countries, they found these are very peculiar people and they live across the Sindhu. They could not pronounce Sindhu, they said Hindu. When the Greek people came, Yavanas, they also could not pronounce Sindhu, they said Indus. India, Indus, Hindu, Hindi, all are only people living behind Sindhu river. And Sindhu is ocean also. Between Sindhu river and the ocean, those who live are Hindus or Indians. Shankar unified them. Really brilliant people know this. You have heard the name Lokmanya Bal Gangadhar Tilak? He has said Shankar was the first to unify religion in India and Swami Vivekananda next. And Shankar made us all believe we are Vedikas. Now, another thing is started. You are worshipping Ganapati, all right. But let your mind not be one-sided. Why not worship 5 gods? Panchayatana Puja he introduced throughout India. Different Panchayatana. Okay, you have Ganpati Panchayat. Ganpati will be the main deity, but Shiva will be there, Vishnu will be there, Devi will be there, Surya will be there. 4, 5 Ganpati. They are Devi worshippers. Devi is worshipped in the Vedas, so you are the Vedikas, and you worship Devi as the main, but Shiva, Vishnu, Surya and Ganpati, let them be there. Like that, different panchayatans he made. For people, why? Different adhikaris, different minds, and they must grow spiritually. So, Jagadguru, while describing my perspective, I come to this, that Shankar is not only philosopher, he is not a philosopher, I would say. He is not a preacher of Advaita Vedanta only. He is a Jagadguru. So, what I was telling is, in my spiritual life, how I play Shankaracharya. And when I say my spiritual life, identifying with the whole India, I am saying this. Now let us extend the boundaries. Shankaracharya's commentaries, they are not the only literature, mind you. 3 types of literature Shankar has written. I would add 4 also. The commentaries, independent books, and stotras. We can never deny that they are not by Shankar. Those intellectual people, they are mad after Advaita philosophy, and stotras are by somebody else. Shankara like stotra, nobody can write, I will tell you. A Advaiti can only be a real devotee because of his absolute one-pointedness, because of his understanding that all these are forms of God and through any form we can reach Him. And his stotras, Ganga stotra, Yamuna has written 2 stotras on Yamuna. Narmada stotra, all gods and goddesses, he has written stotra. I was telling 4th also, I will come to that later on. Especially, he has written treatises on the Tantra. Definitely, you cannot deny that. His Tantra is different from what we call the Vamachar. So, Orthodox people call it Dakshinachar. His Saundarya Lahari and many books are there, Yoga Taravali, which are authorized books on Tantra. Anyway, now we go back, and his age became 16. He went to Govindapad, and Govindapad. Now, some people think that he got sannyas in his house by himself. That does not appear proper. I do not know, might have happened. But in Omkareshwar, we should listen to tradition that is better than the so-called intellectuals. In Omkareshwar, near the cave, on the hill, there is a smashana. And I believe at least that Govindapad gave him sannyas there. The formal sannyas. And he taught him. He might have realized, he must have realized by hearing Tattvamasi, but then there is something called training of the mind. And for 3 years he lived with his Guru and became adept in what we call Vedanta. Now, one thing happened there. The traditional Shankarites tell this important thing. We know his commentaries on Prasanatraya, that is not the only thing. His Guru Govindapad told him that it is your mission to write commentaries. But though you have got knowledge, I don't know whether you are capable of writing commentaries. That is the art itself. You have to enter the original Rishi's mind and then write commentaries. So, I want to test you whether you can write commentaries. And the book which Guru thought simplest, he gave Vishnu Sahasranam to Shankara. Write commentary on this first. And we can very clearly see the commentary on Vishnu Sahasranam as if a small child is performing. He has put his entire might in explaining every word. It is a great treatise, both for Bhakti Sadhakas and for Jnana Sadhakas. Those who are interested, I am not preaching myself, but I had my classes on Vishnu Sahasranam in Hindi and English and everything. Then Guru was satisfied. And Guru said, yes, I see you can write the commentary very well. Now you write about the Upanishads. And the first commentary on the Upanishad is Taittiriya Upanishad, mind you. So, we have come to this point. We are trying to study both Shankar's life and teachings, his teachings by his life and vocal teachings, writings, and in that we have found the place of Shankaracharya in our spiritual life. One more important point is there. Next, tomorrow I will take, but today I indicate. You see, the history of man flows. We are not interested in political history, but there is a history of thought. And India is famous in the history of thought, mind you. The Westerners say you did not write history because we did not believe in a king died and born and all that history. So, my Guruji's word use was that psychological point in history. What was the psychological point? Two things were there: Buddhism and Karma Kanda. So, a little history I touched today, tomorrow I will take it. There was what happened? Buddha preached and he destroyed our faith in the Vedas. Now people could not catch his philosophy, his way, very high. So Buddhism itself decayed very badly and we had nothing to hold on to. At that point, a great man was born, Kumaril Bhatta. The Buddhist philosophers or Buddhist teachers are very sharp in their analytical reason. No Indian philosophy can equate them. So Kumaril saw that due to their superior arguments, analysis, they are proving that your Vedas are wrong. To learn that, he became Buddhist and learned all their subtler logic methods. Got himself reconverted and debated with his own Guru, and then the Guru, he had made a condition that if you lose, you come to my sampradaya or you perish. So the Guru entered Tushanal, that is the story. This hurt Kumaril Bhatta very much. And he entered Tushanal himself. Tushanal means hay, dry grass, get burnt in a dry grass. I will tell the story tomorrow, but when Shankar entered the field, that was the psychological field one side with the Karmakanda, one side the remaining Buddhistic thought. It was at this point Shankar entered. And we understand Shankar better when we know this psychological history. Why he continuously is hating on karma? Because a ready Purva Paksha is there before him. One more small point let me tell now. By Kumaril's effort, very few Buddhists had remained. And lock, stock and barrel, along with their books, they were driven out. The famous book of Buddhism is Madhyamaka Karika. It was not existing in India. In 1950, Government of India and Bihar government made attempts to retrieve the Buddhistic books, reconvert them into Sanskrit from Pali and Prakrit. So now, today we know what is Madhyamaka Karika. And it is by Nagarjuna. And he has almost like Mandukya Karika. People thought, Shankar thought, that he is preaching Shunyavad. And he has hit very badly on Shunyavad. That is necessary. We should not succumb to Shunyavad. But Shunyavad is not existing as a philosophy. Shunyavad was thought of by Shankara. Anyway, from this very point, we can resume tomorrow because 3 days are there with us. We can come to a... Today was the introduction, you may say, or collating all my thoughts. I think I have described the Anubandha Chatushtaya today. Aim, identity with Brahman or unity with Brahman. Subject matter, Shankar, his life and teachings. Adhikari, different levels and different minds. Sambandha is one thing remaining, which is the most important. How we get connected through Shankar's life and works with our aim of life, that is not by intellect. That is by trying to experience what Shankar has told us. We have to try to experience that. And feeling lays an important point in that experience. Some people can reach it by vichar. We are reading Apurakshanavati and Shankar has told those who are adhikara sampanna, they should do vichar. So, methods also are various, minds are various, and for all of them, Shankara is the great Jagat Guru, born in the 8th century. Difficult because historians go on changing. For a long time it was established that he was in the later part of 8th century, but now they are telling beginning of 8th century. Anyway, so he was born in that psychological moment when the philosophical field of India was pervaded by Buddhistic ideas at one side, and other side Kumarila Bhatta re-established faith in Vedas through Karma Kanda. There were the two Purva Pakshas before Shankaracharya. From this point, tomorrow we resume 5:30. Om Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Loka Shankaram. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.
Maharaj, our appetite for this has been ignited further.
Definitely.
So we are all very eagerly waiting to hear you again tomorrow.
Yes.
And I request all the participants who have participated in this meeting to freely ask questions.
Yes.
You can send your questions to us at our email ID, mail@advaitashrama.org, and also we have noted down your chat messages. So Maharaj will be answering your questions tomorrow or day after tomorrow as per his convenience. So Maharaj, once again I express my heartfelt and humble pranams to you, and tomorrow again we meet at 5:30. Pranams Maharaj, pranams.
Okay.
Pranams. We disperse.
Okay.